Welcome, everyone, to this ClickCreate Curator Spotlight. This month, we have Houston by Snofro. What is the inspiration for this curation's theme?
I've had a really intense last 3 years of entering the world of broader art collecting. But prior to that, I was collecting a ton of art, but it wasn't art like we're talking about today. Like I was collecting art from people here in Houston who either are my family or close friends. So I just sat down and I thought about who are the people whose art I collected before my journey in Web3, before I claimed my first CryptoPunk, and there was only 3. One of them being my brother's work. A lot of what I have of his, he just gifted me. He's always like gifted things for birthdays and Christmas. And then Peter Malick's work as a photographer, he's one of my closest friends and someone that when he started exhibiting his work here in Houston, it was just crazy to be in the room with someone that was kind of like doing solo shows and doing shows. And Carlos Pozo, which, I actually refer to him pretty often within this ecosystem because I mentioned him not only as someone whose work I degened into, I guess you could say. I've collected dozens of his pieces. But yeah, these are just 3 people that I casually got to collect and got to also strengthen my relationship with them through collecting. It's just been such an important part of my journey as a collector. It's not, I didn't get to just come in and buy just anything. I had to, be very thoughtful about what I spent my money on. And this work didn't just call to me, but it also it just made me feel real special. I really feel like I got to participate in another artist's success.
What lasting impression do you hope to achieve with this curation?
One lasting impression from this curation is just putting Houston a little bit higher in terms of visibility within our digital art space. Houston may not be the most exhilarating city, but we have incredible art. But in the Web3 space, Houston's not as represented. I think Houston does seem a little bit overlooked. I think opportunity to be a world-renowned artist coming out of Houston is probably a little bit more of an uphill climb. Maybe if you're coming out of like the studios of New York and LA and Chicago. And to me, that's an opportunity for me to kind of highlight some of these artists. And it felt really important, and it felt like a really good opportunity to get to bring together some people from my hometown. And then also just kind of documenting we're just normal people and we all came from like this very normal world. And yeah, that's what I'd love to see kind of come out of it, is like highlighting these folks' journeys.
With this curation, what narrative do you hope to convey?
There's one kind of theme here, which I think is just like the journey of an artist. To me, that jump that I mentioned earlier from like a 1 of 6 or a 1 of 10 to the 1 of 1 felt like a really special moment. I look back at that as something that I felt very fortunate to be around like when that was happening, and then also get to like share how impactful their career has been on just the madness of what's happened in my life in the last 3 years. I really don't know that the path would have been the same without each and every one of these artists and their impact. Even before I made the Chromie Squiggle as a demonstration of variability from an algorithm, Danny made his Genesis piece, the piece he released on day 1 of Art Blocks, as the precursor to that to demonstrate the variability of the blockchain. Pete as like my greatest critic, but also just like such a supportive individual that's just kind of been here along for the ride this whole time. And then Carlos, I'm very much inspired and intrigued and appreciate his aesthetic. The stories that these 3 have are just unbelievable. So yeah, bringing those things together here feel really special.
How is screen printing unique to Carlos's process?
Carlos, he's an architect. He's a licensed architect. He's been working architecture for a long time, and it just shows. The work that he does is generally screen printing, but it always starts digitally. he used and continues to use Google SketchUp to create these 3D pieces and render them in a way that were able to be turned into screen printing. And the medium of screen printing enabled him to sell things for what I consider to be a really affordable cost. Like at a time where I couldn't just afford to buy, just anything that I wanted to buy, I would just relish in the idea that I could buy a print from him for like $35-$40, and it felt really special. And of course, back then, I was really into the number one of the series, and so then he started kind of setting aside the number ones when he did a large series, culminating, kind of right before Art Block started, with him releasing a one-of-one screen print, which to me, as someone that has screen printed before and understands the process, completely blew my mind. The idea that you would make some screens, make one piece, and then destroy the screens right after that. The geometric style is something that it's minimalism. It's also kinetic. It's in the static screen print, it's like incredibly kinetic, and just every time I walk by it, I get really excited. I see it to this day, now that I've built a collection of art that's pretty insane. I still look back at those pieces as some of my absolute favorites. And it really just goes to show that, the value of an artwork is completely unrelated to like how much you can enjoy an artwork. And the fact that I walk by a $35 screen print every single day, it's just a really special thing. Also, just like the crazy variety of work. I mean, you'd go to an art fair and he'd have a bin and there'd be like 100 different pieces in there. They'd all be different. And when you just think about how much time it takes to make each one of those pieces and how much of his like life he's put into those, like it just felt really special being able to collect that work.
How does Peter show what the photographer's eye can do?
Pete is also an architect. He was an early roommate of mine and someone that I got to know right when I moved back to Houston. And he eventually evolved his career from architecture to architectural photography. His ability to capture a scene and then like the insane level of detail that he puts into the editing of the photographs to really highlight what is intended to be highlighted. What he did on the side with his own personal like artistic endeavors was not architectural. I just remember in his first exhibition that I went to, he has this beautiful piece of a bunch of pigeons on a ledge, and it's really foggy, and if you just don't look twice, you just see a bunch of pigeons on a ledge. But if you just take a little moment to look at it, you see the faint outline of like a very iconic Houston building in the photograph. And I just remember, just like most people probably looking at the image, missing that building, coming back to it, noticing the building and being like, oh man. And it really just kind of demonstrates what like the photographer's eye can do. Later on, he went all in on drones and made a really beautiful collection where he would take photographs of intersections high up, like perfectly lined up, perfectly straight, and like piecing them together into these larger sets. Not only was I just like exceptionally excited about, but also, and I got to work with him on showing it at the Venice Biennale. I just feel like I've been able to be at least partially participatory in his career and his success. And I think that's something that speaks to, there is a sense of that happening in Web3 where like we might have all came for the flip but stayed for the art, but then like also starting to engage with the artists and understanding their career and giving them feedback and being able to see the trajectory of an artist is special to get to witness it firsthand. So that's a big reason why I've always been a big fan of his work as well, as I've gotten to watch it evolve. I just really appreciate that journey.
How does Daniel's art have authenticity?
With regards to my brother, I mean, what can I say? I've been watching him make art since he was 5 years old. And there's this idea as an artist where it's like, okay, now like you have to know when to stop. And on multiple occasions, and this is early on, Danny would be making a piece of art and I'd be like, okay, this is when you stop. But then he would always take it a step further. And in my mind, it would be like making it weird, and not in a bad way, but also kind of like, man, like you should have stopped before. And now I look back at those pieces where he was like, no, like this is me. There was always something rough around the edges about his work that in some cases may have felt unfinished. He used to work with like these beautiful laser cutting blocks, and the perimeter of the piece that he gave me was just like raw plywood. I was like, I think when I frame this, I'm gonna like put the frame tight up against like the blocks that you made because they're really beautiful. And then looking back now, I look at just kind of where his brain is and what he thinks and how raw his work is and how emotional his work is, and realize that it would be like destroying that piece to just like take away that level of kind of rawness. And just watching an artistic career evolve over the course of 30 some years is, again, like a really special experience. It's something I'm really glad to be able to participate in. And, the pieces that he's gifted me are some of the most cherished pieces. And I feel very fortunate to be able to include him in this curation as well.